Hello, folks. This is Janet Baker. I am part of our product development team here at First Watch. Today I'm going to be going over some new features we have added to our IDV, or Interactive Data Visualization tool. We recently rolled out a new widget, which is a heat map widget to show information by hour of day and day of week. In addition, we've added some additional filtering for the inclusion and exclusion criteria in the IDV setup and the ability for users to clone or copy a tab. So let's hop on over to our IDV setup and we'll go over some of these items. On my screen here, you will see I have the heat map widget set up. Typically, you'll use the widget for a count or distinct count of your incidents to see them by hour of day and day of week. However, we did build in the capability for you to apply sum, average, and percentile as well. Usually, if you're setting those up, you will apply them against some sort of calculated field like turnout time or task time or your response time. So I'm going to show you how to set up this widget. It's really easy. When you're in your IDV setup, you go to your widget setup, you select your heat map, hour of day, day of week. In this instance, I am going to do a distinct count of incident number. So I selected a data element of incident number, and I am now going to select count distinct. I'm not going to apply any inclusion or exclusion rules at this time. I'm going to save and preview. And I now have the heat map widget with a distinct count of my incident number. All I would have to do is publish, and then it would populate on my tab in my published version of IDV. One thing I want to point out is once you've published, the heat map widget does take up an entire row of your setup screen. So you can have widgets above and widgets below, but just know that when you're setting this up, you're not going to be able to set anything to the right or left of this widget. Also, once you have published, you do have the ability, as you'll see here, as I hover over my hour, day, day of week cells, the cell kind of comes forward. And let's say that for this 9 o'clock hour on Sunday, I wanted to know what those 15 calls were because I'm a little concerned as to what's making up that warmer color, if you will. So I have the ability to right-click, and I can export it to Grid or Excel. And if I export to Grid, it'll come to the bottom of the screen, and you'll see here I did that a little bit earlier. And I have a list of those calls so I can see what is making up that number. So that's it for the heat map widget, but let's hop back over to our setup and talk about some of the other items that we have developed. I'm going to go into a tab that I have here, and where you will see some of the new operators. Let's say this widget I have a count distinct of my incident number, and I'm going to my inclusion exclusion rules. Where you will see the new additions are in the criteria for filtering. And the new options we have are is not null or empty, greater than and equal to, less than and equal to, like, and not like. So we will have a cheat sheet available to you with more information on all of these options and how you can set them up. But I am going to kind of give you a brief overview of how they may or may not be used. So the is not null or empty comes into play where the field names such as destination may be blank or null. If you're setting up a widget to look at transports to hospital, you may want to add an option where destination is not null or empty to your filter. So in this case, destination is not null or empty, save and preview, and then the counts on my widget would adjust to filter out those null destinations. So your greater than, your less than options are meant to be used against your calculated fields, such as your turnout time, your response time, and the like. An example where you may want to add that into your filtering has to do with, let's say you're looking at an average of turnout time on your widget, and then you want to exclude certain values from that average, such as those that have a turnout time of 0. Or another option is maybe you are looking at, you want to know how many counts of responses you have that have a turnaround time that's greater than an hour. So you would select whatever widget you're doing, your turnaround time. And in this case, I'm selecting greater than and equal to. And the value that you enter has to be entered in seconds. For the hour, it's 60 minutes in an hour. 60 minutes times 60 seconds is 3,600, and that's where I have my value. If I save and preview, this particular widget will give me a count of the number of responses I had that were at the hospital longer or equal to the hour. As with any of our widgets, the same thing applies on that widget. If you needed to know what those calls were or what units were, you can always export to Grid, Excel, and PowerPoint. So what about the like and not like operators? They are typically going to be set up against some type of text field to filter in and out a pattern. When used behind the scenes, the logic will apply wildcard characters before and after the value, but you can also use wildcard characters before and after, or even within your value. And more of this will be available in the cheat sheet that we will be providing to talk a little bit more about some of these new items. Some of the situations in which you may use the like or not like might be where, let's say, I'm doing average of turnout. And here I have unit starts with EMS, but I what if I have EMS on the end or something before EMS or after EMS? I might want to do unit like EMS, and in that case, it would pick up any type of unit name that has EMS in it because it's looking before and after the word EMS. Another option where you might use the like or not like is you may want to know what number of counts to an address. So here on this widget, I have address location is like Oak Forest. I don't know what house number I want or whether Oak Forest is a lane or a road, so I might set up this widget just to look for the word Oak Forest and give me a count. So it's looking for anything that has Oak Forest as part of the address. And again, the same concept is if you have this here, you can export to Grid, Excel, you can narrow down, you can go back to your widget and set it up as you need to. The final option we're going to talk about today in the IDV setup is the cloning or copying of a tab. Let's say you have your widget set up and they may be filtering against a specific department, but you want the same setup against a different department. You don't want to have to go in and recreate all the widgets on the tab in order to get it set up for the second department. With the new feature, we can copy or clone what you have set up. So let's say Department A tab that I have here has all the widgets I want. I want to apply these against different departments, but I don't, so each department can have their own tab. I can right-click on this. I can select Copy, and you can copy it without renaming it. In this case, I'm going to select the option of rename, and I'm going to call my new tab Department B. Select Yes, and I have copied, cloned the tab of Department A to Department B. And the only thing I would have to do is go in, and if I had inclusion, exclusion rules for the department, is change those to the new department. Save them. After you've edited all of your widgets, publish it, and then you will now have a tab for Department A and a tab for Department B. So now that we've talked about some of the options in setup, after you've published your IDV, there are some additional features that we do have out there. So you have the ability to show totals on your charts and graphs. As you can see, I've enabled them here. I have this particular widget I actually have show my totals as a column chart because I'm counting by my priorities. Now, one thing to note, when I set up this widget for count by priority, I'm going to just point out that I did a count of my incident number, and then my group by was priority. You wouldn't want to set up your count by priority itself. It's your grouping that you're going to do in your setup that will give you that breakout by priority. Just make sure that you're counting incident number because that's the totals that will come up. So going back over to our show totals, once we have those, you can now close out your tab. And then when you go back into your IDV setup, that tab will still persist showing your totals. The only exception to this rule is if you have made some changes in your setup and republish. When you do that, it does reset the show totals, so you would have to go back in and automatically set them back up. That is about all for today, but we are actively working on new features for the future, such as the ability for information to auto-refresh, so you can have it displayed on a screen somewhere, the ability for copying IDV to other users without having to go through us to do so, and the addition of OR filters in the inclusion or exclusion criteria. All of these ideas come about because of your valuable input, so thank you. If you have any questions or need any further guidance, please don't hesitate to reach out to your regional sales manager or your customer care representative. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.